Ambassador Zexthal adjusted his ceremonial robes as he entered the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council. The massive chamber buzzed with conversations in dozens of languages, each species represented by their finest diplomats. Today marked the 500th anniversary of the Council's formation, and every member race had sent their most distinguished representatives. The Calari delegation whispered among themselves, their crystalline forms catching the artificial starlight that illuminated the hall. Nearby, the hulking Gronthak warriors stood in perfect formation, their armor gleaming despite their peaceful intentions. The delicate whisper folk floated gracefully above their designated area, their translucent wings creating beautiful patterns in the air. Zexthal noticed something unusual as he scanned the vast assembly. The human delegation seats remained empty. Strange, he thought. Humans were never late to important gatherings. In fact, they were often the first to arrive, bringing their endless questions and peculiar enthusiasm for bureaucratic procedures that most species found tedious. "Has anyone seen the human representatives?" Zexthal asked his aide, a young Myrthan whose blue scales shimmered nervously. "No, sir, but I'm sure they'll arrive soon. You know how humans are about their dramatic entrances," the aide replied, though uncertainty colored his voice. The opening ceremony began with the traditional hymns of unity. Each species contributed their voices to the cosmic symphony that had marked every major council event for centuries. The Trilons provided their haunting melodies, the boom speakers added their thunderous bass notes, and the chirpers filled in with their rapid, cheerful harmonies. But something was missing. The human contribution, their strange but oddly moving vocal arrangements, remained absent from the composition. The symphony felt incomplete, like a puzzle with crucial pieces removed. Chancellor Vorthak, the ancient Zorvani who had led the council for over 2 centuries, called the assembly to order. His massive form dominated the central platform, his 6 arms gesturing with practiced authority. "Honored delegates, we gather today to celebrate 500 years of peace, cooperation, and mutual prosperity," his voice boomed across the chamber. "Before we begin our commemorative ceremonies, let us acknowledge each member species." One by one, delegations stood as their names were called. The proud Iridani raised their weapons in salute. The collective hive-mind species responded with perfect synchronization. The mysterious shadow walkers materialized briefly before fading back into their preferred invisibility. "The Terran Federation," Chancellor Vorthak announced, his voice carrying across the silent hall. Nothing happened. The human seats remained conspicuously empty. Murmurs began to spread through the assembly like ripples in a pond. Zexthal felt a growing unease in his stomach. In his 40 years of council service, he had never seen an empty delegation seat during a major ceremony. "Perhaps they're running late due to their recent expansion projects," suggested Councillor Yenth from the Pacifist Coalition. "Their construction fleets have been quite busy in the outer systems." Chancellor Vorthak nodded diplomatically, but his expression showed concern. "We'll continue with the ceremony and address the human absence later." As the ceremonies progressed, the empty human seats became impossible to ignore. Other delegations kept glancing toward the vacant area, their conversations growing more animated. The humans had been active council members for over 300 years, contributing significantly to trade agreements, conflict resolution, and technological advancement. During the first recess, Zexthal approached Ambassador Kyrth of the Information Guild, a species known for their extensive communication networks. "Have you received any messages from human space recently?" Zexthal inquired. Kyrth's multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought. "Now that you mention it, our communication attempts have gone unanswered for several weeks. We assumed they were busy with internal matters." "Several weeks," Zexthal's concern deepened. "That's highly unusual for such a communicative species." The 2 ambassadors were joined by others who had noticed the pattern. Trade representatives mentioned delayed shipments from human space. Military liaisons reported that human patrol fleets had withdrawn from joint operations. Scientific collaborators spoke of abandoned research projects and silent laboratories. "This is unprecedented," declared General Krax of the warrior caste. "Humans don't simply disappear. They argue, they negotiate, they make speeches, they don't go quiet." As the day wore on, the human absence cast a shadow over what should have been a joyous celebration. Emergency communication attempts were made to human colonies, trade stations, and diplomatic outposts. Each attempt met with the same result: silence. Chancellor Vorthak called for an emergency session during the evening hours. The Great Hall, which had been filled with celebration just hours before, now hummed with tension and uncertainty. "Distinguished colleagues," the Chancellor began, "we face an unprecedented situation. The Terran Federation, one of our most active and vocal member species, has seemingly ceased all communication with the galactic community." The hall erupted in concerned voices. Some species demanded immediate investigation, while others suggested patience. The paranoid collective immediately assumed hostile action by unknown enemies. The Optimist Alliance insisted there must be a reasonable explanation. "I propose we dispatch a joint investigation fleet to human space," suggested Admiral Vexthara of the Exploration Corps. "Whatever has happened, we need to understand it." Zexthal stood to address the assembly. "With respect, I believe we should first attempt to understand the scope of this situation. When did human communication cease? What was their last known activity? Are we dealing with a technical malfunction, a political decision, or something more serious?" The questions hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Around the Great Hall, hundreds of species that had grown accustomed to human presence, human innovation, and human diplomatic intervention now faced the unsettling reality that their neighbors had simply vanished from galactic affairs. As the night deepened, emergency committees formed to address different aspects of the crisis. Trade committees calculated the economic impact of lost human commerce. Military advisors assessed security implications. Diplomatic corps members tried to piece together the timeline of human withdrawal. But beneath all the official responses and emergency protocols, a deeper question emerged. The humans had always been the species that asked, why? When others asked, what? They had been the ones to push boundaries, to explore the impossible, to dream of futures that seemed beyond reach. Now they were gone, leaving only empty seats and unanswered questions. And somehow, their absence felt like the beginning of something far more significant than anyone in the Great Hall could yet imagine. The anniversary celebration had become a wake for a species that might not even be dead. As delegates retired to their quarters, many found themselves staring out at the stars, wondering if somewhere in the vast darkness, humanity was watching them back. 3 days after the failed anniversary celebration, the joint investigation fleet assembled at Nexus Station. Ships from 12 different species formed an impressive armada, each vessel representing the finest technology their civilization could offer. The crystalline ships of the Kalari sparkled like diamonds against the star field, while the massive Gronthak dreadnoughts looked like floating fortresses of dark metal. Captain Thorn Blackwater of the Zentharan Navy commanded the mission from his flagship, the Truth Seeker. His species had earned their reputation as the galaxy's finest investigators, their natural ability to detect deception making them perfect for uncovering mysteries. But as he studied the star charts showing human space, even his enhanced senses couldn't penetrate the growing puzzle. "All vessels report ready for jump to the Sol system," announced his communications officer, Lieutenant Zess. The multi-armed Paladin had coordinated thousands of military operations, but her voice carried an unusual tension. "Before we depart," Captain Blackwater addressed the fleet, "remember that we're not invading human space. We're investigating the disappearance of our allies. Weapons remain powered down unless we encounter immediate threats." The fleet jumped to hyperspace in perfect formation. The journey to Sol would take 6 hours, giving the investigators time to review everything they knew about recent human activity. Dr. Yolantha, the expedition's chief analyst, had spent those 3 days compiling every scrap of information about humanity's final communications. The rabbit-like Hopkins species were known for their incredible memory and attention to detail, making them invaluable for complex investigations. "The pattern is disturbing," she reported to the senior staff. "Human communication didn't gradually decrease. It stopped abruptly across all their territory within a 72-hour period. Trade ships, military vessels, civilian communications, research stations, everything went silent simultaneously." Commander Zexthal, who had been temporarily assigned to the investigation, studied the data with growing concern. That level of coordination suggests either a massive technical failure or a deliberate action by their government. Or something worse, added Chief Medical Officer Kelleth, whose arachnid species had an unfortunate talent for imagining worst-case scenarios. Mass extinction events, plague, invasion by unknown hostile forces. Captain Blackwater silenced the speculation with a gesture. We'll know soon enough. Sensors show we're approaching the Sol system. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, their sensors immediately beginning comprehensive scans. What they found defied all expectations. The system appeared completely normal. Earth rotated peacefully in its orbit, its blue and green surface showing no signs of devastation. The moon remained in its proper position. Mars showed the familiar domes of human terraforming projects. The asteroid mining stations between Mars and Jupiter operated with mechanical precision. Life signs, Captain Blackwater asked his sensor operator. Massive populations detected on Earth, Mars, and 17 orbital habitats, the officer reported, all within normal parameters for human space. Communications. Nothing, sir. They're not responding to our hails, but they're not jamming us either. They're simply not talking. The fleet moved cautiously toward Earth, their sensors gathering increasingly puzzling data. Human ships moved through the system on routine missions. Cargo vessels transported goods between planets. Military patrols followed standard patterns. Everything appeared completely normal, except for the absolute silence. Take us to Earth orbit, Captain Blackwater ordered. Perhaps visual contact will provide answers. As they approached the blue planet, the investigation fleet could see the familiar signs of human civilization. Cities glowed on the night side of the planet. Orbital elevators stretched like silver threads between the surface and space stations. Traffic moved through established shipping lanes with efficient precision. Dr. Yolantha studied her instruments with growing confusion. Captain, I'm detecting what appears to be a massive construction project in the outer system. Something near Pluto's orbit, but it's heavily shielded. On screen, Blackwater commanded. The main viewer showed a distant structure that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen humans build. It appeared to be some kind of installation, but its purpose remained unclear through the interference. My God, whispered Commander Zexthal, that thing must be the size of a small moon. Lieutenant Zess looked up from her communications station with excitement. Sir, I'm receiving a transmission. The entire bridge fell silent as a human voice filled the command center. But instead of addressing the investigation fleet, it was clearly an internal communication. Construction teams, this is Control. We're ahead of schedule. Estimate completion in 18 days rather than the projected 30. All civilian populations have been successfully relocated. Military units report all sectors secure. The transmission cut off, leaving the investigators staring at each other in shock. Relocated, Dr. Yolantha said quietly. Why would they relocate their entire civilian population? Before anyone could answer, proximity alarms began sounding. A massive human fleet had appeared seemingly from nowhere, surrounding the investigation ships with practiced efficiency. Captain Blackwater felt his tactical instincts take over. All ships maintain position, do not power weapons, this is still a diplomatic mission. A new voice came over the communications system, this time directed at them. It belonged to Admiral Sarah Chen, whom several of the investigators recognized from previous council meetings. Galactic Council vessels, you are entering restricted space during a critical operation. For your safety and the security of this system, you must withdraw beyond the outer planetary boundary. Captain Blackwater activated his own transmitter. Admiral Chen, this is Captain Blackwater of the Joint Investigation Fleet. The Galactic Council is concerned about the sudden communication blackout from human space. We're here to offer assistance and determine if you require aid. A long pause followed before Admiral Chen responded. Captain, I appreciate the Council's concern, but we require no assistance. Humanity is engaged in a classified project of critical importance. We will resume normal diplomatic relations once our current operations are complete. Admiral, with respect, the sudden silence has caused significant concern among your allies. Can you provide any information about the nature of your project? Another pause, longer this time. When Admiral Chen spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made every investigator lean forward. Captain Blackwater, humanity stands at the threshold of the greatest undertaking in our species' history. What we're doing here will change everything, not just for us, but potentially for the entire galaxy. But we cannot share details until we're certain of success. Too much depends on maintaining absolute security. Dr. Yolantha quickly analyzed the human admiral's speech patterns. "Captain," she whispered, "she's not lying, but she's under tremendous stress. Whatever they're doing, they believe it's incredibly important." The human fleet maintained their positions around the investigation vessels, not threatening, but clearly prepared to enforce their demands. Captain Blackwater found himself facing an impossible choice: respect human sovereignty or force a confrontation with a long-standing ally. "Admiral Chen, the Council has asked me to verify the safety and well-being of human space. Can you at least confirm that your population is secure?" "All human citizens are safe and accounted for," Admiral Chen replied immediately. "We've taken extensive measures to ensure their protection during this operation." Commander Zexthal signaled for a private conference with the captain. "Sir, based on what we've observed, the humans appear to be conducting some kind of massive evacuation or relocation. The construction project near Pluto, the communication blackout, the military mobilization, it all suggests they're preparing for something significant." Captain Blackwater nodded grimly. "The question is, are they preparing for something that threatens them or something they're planning to do?" As if reading his thoughts, Admiral Chen's voice returned to the communications channel. "Captain, I can tell you this much. Humanity has discovered something that will require us to make a choice that no species in galactic history has ever faced. We need time to prepare, and we need absolute secrecy until we're ready to act." The mysterious construction project near Pluto continued its work in the distance, while hundreds of human ships moved with purpose throughout the system. The investigation fleet hung in space, surrounded by their former allies, trying to understand what could drive an entire species to isolate themselves from the galaxy they had helped build. Whatever the humans were planning, it was clear that when they finally broke their silence, nothing would ever be the same. The investigation fleet returned to Council space with more questions than answers, but their report sent shockwaves through the galactic government. Emergency sessions convened around the clock as species representatives tried to understand what humanity might be planning. Ambassador Zexthal found himself appointed to lead a special committee tasked with analyzing human behavior patterns and predicting their next moves. The committee included experts from 17 different species, each bringing their unique perspective to the puzzle. "Let's examine what we know," Zexthal addressed the assembled experts in the secure briefing room. "Humanity has evacuated their civilian population to unknown locations, constructed a massive installation in their outer system, and imposed a complete communication blackout while maintaining normal defensive operations." Dr. Yolantha spread holographic displays across the table showing human territory and recent activities. "I've been analyzing their historical patterns. Humans typically become secretive only when they're developing defensive technologies or preparing for major exploration missions. Or when they're planning something they believe others won't approve of," added Counselor Vren of the Ethics Committee. His slug-like species had an unfortunate talent for identifying moral ambiguities in any situation. Professor Kethman, the galaxy's leading expert on human psychology, activated his own data displays. The elderly sage's 4 eyes studied the information with centuries of accumulated wisdom. "Humans are unique among galactic species in their approach to existential challenges," he explained. "Most species seek consensus and gradual adaptation. Humans tend toward dramatic, revolutionary solutions when faced with fundamental problems." "What kind of fundamental problem would require evacuating an entire civilization?" asked General Krax, his warrior instincts clearly troubled by the military implications. Before anyone could answer, Chancellor Vorthak entered the briefing room with an expression of deep concern. His presence immediately silenced all conversation. "I've just received disturbing intelligence from our deep space monitoring stations," he announced. 3 days ago, a massive energy signature was detected in the direction of the Andromeda galaxy. The signature matched no known technology in our databases." The committee members exchanged worried glances. Andromeda was nearly 3 million light-years away, far beyond the reach of any known galactic civilization. Could this be connected to human activities? Zexthal asked. The timing is suspicious, the Chancellor replied. The energy signature appeared exactly 74 hours after our investigation fleet returned from human space. Dr. Yolantha's analytical mind immediately began processing the implications. If humans detected this energy signature before we did, it would explain the urgency of their preparations. But what could threaten them from Andromeda? Professor Kethman's expression grew grave as he accessed historical databases. There are legends among the elder species about signals from other galaxies. Most dismiss them as myths, but humans have always taken such stories more seriously than others. Are you suggesting they received some kind of communication from outside our galaxy? General Krax asked incredulously. Humans excel at detecting patterns others miss, Kethman replied. Their SETI programs have been scanning for extraterrestrial intelligence for centuries longer than most species considered the possibility. Chancellor Vorthak activated the room's main display, showing the energy signature from Andromeda. The pattern was clearly artificial, too structured to be natural phenomena. Our scientists estimate this signal originated approximately 50,000 years ago, he explained. By the time it reached our monitoring stations, whatever sent it was already ancient history. Unless, Zexthal said slowly, it wasn't a random signal. What if it was a response to something we sent 50,000 years ago? The committee fell silent as the implications sank in. 50,000 years ago marked the early expansion period of galactic civilization, when the first species began broadcasting their presence to the cosmos. Dr. Yolantha's whiskers twitched with nervous energy as she pulled up historical records. The archive database shows extensive radio broadcasts began approximately 49,800 years ago. The signal would have reached Andromeda about the right time for a response to arrive now. So you're suggesting that someone in Andromeda received our early broadcasts and sent a response? General Krax's skepticism was evident. And humans somehow detected this response before our own monitoring systems. Professor Kethman nodded slowly. Human detection equipment is often more sensitive than our standardized systems. They also monitor a broader range of frequencies. If anyone would detect an unusual signal first, it would be them. Chancellor Vorthak studied the assembled experts with growing concern. If this theory is correct, then humanity may have received evidence of hostile intelligence from another galaxy. That could explain their secrecy and defensive preparations. But why not inform the Council? Zexthal asked. We're allies, we could coordinate a galactic defense. Perhaps, Professor Kethman suggested, they don't believe a conventional defense would be effective. Humans have a unique approach to impossible odds. Instead of accepting defeat, they often attempt to change the fundamental nature of the conflict. Dr. Yolantha accessed human historical records, her advanced memory processing vast amounts of data. Human military doctrine includes numerous examples of strategic withdrawal followed by unconventional counterattacks. They call it tactical retreat to advantageous position. But retreat to where? General Krax demanded. They can't hide an entire civilization. The question hung in the air as each committee member contemplated the possibilities. Finally, Councillor Vren spoke with quiet certainty. They're not planning to hide, they're planning to leave. The simple statement hit the committee like a physical blow. Leave. An entire species didn't simply leave their galaxy. Impossible, General Krax declared. No technology exists for intergalactic travel. No known technology, Professor Kethman corrected. But humans have consistently developed technologies others deemed impossible. Their history is filled with breakthroughs that revolutionized galactic understanding. Chancellor Vorthak accessed another file, showing recent energy readings from human space. The construction project near Pluto has been generating massive power signatures. Whatever they're building requires energy on a scale we've never seen before. Dr. Yolantha began calculating frantically, her analytical mind racing through the implications. If they're planning intergalactic travel, the energy requirements would be astronomical. They would need to harness entire stars. Or find a completely different approach to physics, Professor Kethman added. Humans excel at finding alternatives to conventional wisdom. Zexthal felt a chill as he processed the committee's conclusions. Are we seriously suggesting that humanity has detected a threat from another galaxy and decided their best response is to leave our galaxy entirely? It would explain everything, Counselor Vren said quietly. The secrecy, the evacuation, the massive construction project. They're not preparing to fight an intergalactic war. They're preparing to run from it. Chancellor Vorthak stood silent for long moments, the weight of leadership visible in his posture. Finally, he addressed the committee with grim determination. If humanity is planning to abandon our galaxy in the face of an external threat, the Council needs to know immediately. And we need to decide whether we're going to try to stop them, help them, or find our own way to survive whatever's coming. The committee dispersed to their respective duties, each carrying the terrifying possibility that their human allies might be preparing to abandon them to face an unknown threat from the void between galaxies. As they worked through the night, preparing reports and recommendations, one question dominated every mind. If humans, the species known for never backing down from a fight, believed their only option was to run, what exactly was coming for the rest of them? The emergency session of the full Galactic Council convened under unprecedented security measures. For the first time in Council history, the Great Assembly Hall had been sealed and shielded against all forms of surveillance. The gravity of the situation was evident in every delegate's posture as Chancellor Vorthak called the session to order. Distinguished representatives, we face a crisis that may determine the fate of galactic civilization, he began, his voice carrying across the hushed chamber. The evidence suggests our human allies have detected a threat so severe that they're preparing to abandon our galaxy entirely. The announcement triggered immediate chaos. Delegates leaped to their feet, voices raised in dozens of languages as species representatives demanded explanations, denied possibilities, and argued over appropriate responses. The chamber filled with the sound of confusion and fear. General Krax's booming voice cut through the noise. Order, we need facts, not panic. Ambassador Zexthal took the central platform to present the committee's findings. As he spoke, holographic displays showed the energy signature from Andromeda, the timeline of human withdrawal, and the massive construction project in Sol's outer system. The pattern is clear, Zexthal explained. Humanity received a signal that convinced them to initiate the largest evacuation and construction project in recorded history. They're not preparing for conventional warfare. They're preparing for something else entirely. Councillor Yenth of the Pacifist Coalition raised his hand. Has any attempt been made to communicate with humanity about our concerns? Multiple attempts, Chancellor Vorthak replied. All have been politely but firmly rebuffed. Admiral Chen continues to maintain that they will resume diplomatic contact once their current operation is complete. Dr. Yolantha approached the podium with new data. I've completed analysis of the Andromeda signal. The energy patterns suggest not just intelligence, but multiple intelligence sources. We may be looking at an entire galactic civilization attempting communication. Communication or threat assessment? Asked Ambassador Kyerth of the Information Guild. Unknown, but the signal was directed specifically toward our galaxy and contained mathematical progressions that suggest technological capability far beyond our own. The implications settled over the assembly like a dark cloud. If an advanced civilization from Andromeda had detected their presence and decided to make contact, humanity might have good reason for their extreme caution. Professor Kethman stepped forward with additional analysis. I've studied human historical responses to existential threats. They have a consistent pattern of attempting diplomatic solutions first, followed by military preparation, and finally by what they call paradigm shifts when conventional options prove inadequate. What kind of paradigm shift? Chancellor Vorthak asked. Revolutionary changes in approach. Humans don't simply adapt to impossible situations. They find ways to make the impossible possible. Suddenly, the chamber's communication systems activated without authorization. Every delegate turned toward the main screen as a familiar face appeared. Admiral Sarah Chen looked directly at the assembly with an expression of profound weariness. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. I know you've been trying to understand our recent actions. I'm here to provide the explanation you deserve. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the species that communicated through color changes or electromagnetic pulses stilled their signals to focus on the human admiral. 6 months ago, our deep space monitoring array detected a signal from Andromeda, Admiral Chen continued. The signal was clearly artificial and appeared to be a response to broadcasts we made 53,000 years ago when humanity first achieved interstellar communication capability. She paused, allowing the timeline to sink in. The response was not a greeting, it was a warning. Dr. Yolantha's whiskers twitched with nervous anticipation as Admiral Chen continued. The signal contained detailed information about an entity that the senders call the Convergence. According to the message, this entity systematically consumes galactic civilizations, processing all biological and technological resources into components for its own expansion. The assembly stirred with growing alarm. Counselor Vren's ethical censors immediately began calculating the moral implications of such an entity. The civilization that sent the warning, Admiral Chen explained, was itself consumed approximately 30,000 years ago. They sent their message as a final act before their extinction, hopping to warn other galaxies about what was coming. General Crack stood up, his warrior instincts immediately focused on tactical considerations. What is the nature of this threat? Can it be fought? Admiral Chen's expression grew even more grave. The Convergence operates on scales that make conventional warfare meaningless. It doesn't invade galaxies, it absorbs them. Every star, every planet, every form of matter and energy becomes part of its expanding structure. How long do we have? Chancellor Vorthak asked, though his voice suggested he dreaded the answer. Based on the signal's origin point and tracking data we've gathered, the Convergence will reach the outer edge of our galaxy in approximately 18 months. The announcement hit the assembly like a physical blow. 18 months to face an entity that had consumed entire galactic civilizations. This is why we've maintained communication silence, Admiral Chen continued. We needed absolute secrecy to develop our response without causing galaxy-wide panic. We've been working on a solution that goes beyond conventional defense. Ambassador Zexthal found his voice. What kind of solution? Admiral Chen took a deep breath before answering. We're building a galaxy-scale transportation device, something that can move our entire local group of galaxies to a different region of the universe, far beyond the Convergence's expansion path. The statement defied comprehension. Moving galaxies, the energy requirements alone would be impossible to calculate. The technology is based on principles we discovered in the warning message, Admiral Chen explained. The Andromedans included technical data about spatial manipulation on cosmic scales. They hoped someone might find a way to use their knowledge to escape what they couldn't fight. Professor Kethman leaned forward with intense interest. You're proposing to relocate our entire galactic neighborhood. Not proposing, implementing. The device is 70% complete. In 16 days, we'll begin testing phases. If successful, we can move the entire local group, Milky Way, Andromeda, and 37 smaller galaxies, to a safe region of space approximately 2 billion light-years from our current position. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates tried to process the implications. Some species immediately began calculating the physics involved. Others focused on political ramifications. The warrior species started planning logistics for the largest evacuation in cosmic history. General Krax voiced the question many were thinking. What if the transportation fails? Admiral Chen met his gaze steadily. Then we'll have 18 months to prepare conventional defenses and hope we can slow the Convergence enough for some populations to escape to other regions. And if we refuse to participate in this plan? Asked Counselor Yenth. We won't force anyone, Admiral Chen replied. But we also won't stop our project. Humanity has made its choice. We're leaving with or without the rest of the galaxy. The device will work for everyone in the local group, but if some species prefer to face the Convergence directly, that's their decision. Chancellor Vorthak stood slowly, the weight of leadership visible in every movement. Admiral, humanity is asking us to trust them with the fate of our entire galactic civilization based on a warning from a dead civilization and technology we don't understand. Yes, Admiral Chen replied simply. That's exactly what we're asking, because the alternative is extinction for every living thing in our galaxy. As the session continued into the night, delegates faced the most momentous decision in galactic history. Trust humanity's impossible plan to move their entire cosmic neighborhood, or prepare for war against an entity that had already consumed countless civilizations. The choice would determine not just their survival, but the future of consciousness itself in their corner of the universe. The vote took 4 days of continuous debate. Species after species presented arguments for and against humanity's unprecedented plan. The paranoid collective demanded proof that the convergence actually existed. The warrior castes insisted they could fight any enemy, regardless of size. The pacifist coalition worried about the ethics of abandoning their galaxy without attempting communication with the approaching entity. In the end, the vote was closer than anyone expected. 847 species in favor of supporting the human project, 623 opposed, and 124 abstaining. The narrow margin reflected not just disagreement about the plan, but fundamental differences in how various species approached existential threats. Ambassador Zexthal found himself appointed as council liaison to the human project. As his transport approached the Sol system 2 weeks after the vote, he could see the massive construction site near Pluto had grown beyond all recognition. The structure now dwarfed small planets, its crystalline framework stretching across space like a spider web made of starlight. Admiral Chen met him aboard the command station that controlled the project. The facility buzzed with activity as thousands of humans worked alongside alien volunteers from the supporting species. "Welcome to Project Genesis," Admiral Chen said as she led Zexthal through corridors filled with impossible technology. "Named after humanity's creation myths about new beginnings." "The scale is beyond comprehension," Zexthal admitted, staring through observation windows at the construction site. "How does it work?" Admiral Chen stopped before a massive holographic display showing the local group of galaxies. "The device creates what our physicists call spatial bubbles around each galaxy. These bubbles exist partially outside normal spacetime, allowing us to manipulate their position in the universe." Dr. Sarah Kim, the project's chief scientist, joined them at the display. Her exhaustion was evident, but her excitement was infectious. "We're essentially creating artificial wormholes large enough to encompass entire galaxies," she explained. "The energy requirements are staggering, but we've learned to tap into zero-point quantum fluctuations on a cosmic scale." The Andromedan's warning included theoretical frameworks we never could have developed on our own, Admiral Chen added. "They gave us 300 years of advancement in spacetime physics." Zexthal studied the technical readouts, most of which remained beyond his understanding. "What are the risks?" Dr. Kim's expression grew serious. "Complete failure would simply mean the device doesn't work. Partial failure could tear apart local spacetime, destroying everything within several thousand light-years. Catastrophic failure might destabilize reality in this region of the universe." "Comforting," Zexthal muttered. "The alternative is certain extinction," Admiral Chen reminded him. "We've confirmed the convergence's approach. Our long-range sensors detected the consumption wave at the galaxy's edge last week. We have 14 months. Over the following days, Zexthal toured the various components of Project Genesis. He met Kalari engineers whose crystalline forms could interface directly with the quantum matrices. Gronthak construction teams worked tirelessly in the vacuum of space, their enhanced physiology perfect for the demanding environment. The Whisper folk provided crucial computational support, their collective consciousness able to process the vast calculations required for galactic-scale transportation. Even some of the opposing species had sent unofficial volunteers, unable to resist contributing to the most ambitious engineering project in cosmic history. But not everyone was convinced. 3 months before the planned activation, a fleet of warrior caste ships arrived in the Sol system, demanding to inspect the device for potential military applications. General Torax, their leader, was a veteran of a dozen galactic conflicts. His species measured honor in terms of enemies defeated in direct combat, making the idea of running from any threat fundamentally offensive. "Show me this convergence," he demanded during a tense meeting with Admiral Chen. "If it bleeds, it can be killed." Admiral Chen activated a display showing their latest sensor data. The images were difficult to process, showing space that seemed to twist and fold in on itself as the consumption wave advanced. "It doesn't bleed, General," she said quietly. It doesn't even exist in the same way we do. The convergence is a self-replicating pattern that converts matter and energy into more of itself. It's not alive in any sense we understand. General Torak studied the images with growing unease. His species had faced energy beings, machine intelligences, and cosmic entities before. But the consumption wave showed no characteristics of any known life form or artificial intelligence. How does it think? How does it make decisions? It doesn't, Dr. Kim answered. It follows programmed patterns encoded into its structure. It consumes, processes, expands, and repeats. There's no intelligence to communicate with, no leader to challenge, no weakness to exploit. The general's warrior instincts struggled with the concept of an enemy that couldn't be fought in any meaningful way. What about the species that created it? Dead for millions of years, Admiral Chen replied. They built it as a universal processing tool and lost control. Now it processes everything, including the civilizations that try to stop it. General Torak spent 3 days reviewing all available data before making his decision. When he addressed his fleet, his words carried the weight of absolute conviction. Warriors, we face an enemy that cannot be defeated through courage, skill, or honor. This is not cowardice. This is tactical wisdom. We will support the human evacuation plan. As Project Genesis neared completion, more species changed their positions. The reality of the convergence's approach became impossible to deny as it consumed the galaxy's outer spiral arms. Entire star systems simply disappeared, converted into components of the advancing wave. Refugee fleets began arriving from the galaxy's edge, carrying survivors who had witnessed the consumption firsthand. Their reports eliminated any remaining doubt about the nature of the threat. Dr. Yolantha, now serving as the project's chief coordinator, worked frantically to manage the logistics of evacuating entire civilizations. Billions of ships from thousands of species converged on predetermined rally points, waiting for the moment when Project Genesis would attempt to save them all. Final status report, Admiral Chen announced as the activation countdown reached its final hours. All galaxy anchors are in position, Dr. Kim reported. Quantum matrices are stable at 98.7% efficiency. Zero-point-tap is maintaining required energy levels. Fleet status, Admiral Chen asked Zexthal. 4.7 billion ships from 1,247 species have reported to rally positions, he answered. Another 300 million are en route from the consumption zone. The convergence. 6 months out and accelerating. If we don't activate within the next 12 hours, some rally points will be overrun. Admiral Chen took a deep breath and looked around the command center. Representatives from dozens of species worked side by side, united by necessity and hope. The sight of former enemies collaborating on their mutual survival would have been impossible just months before. All stations report ready for activation, Dr. Kim announced. Then let's make history, Admiral Chen said as she reached for the activation control. Genesis Protocol Initiate. The universe held its breath as humanity's impossible plan began to unfold. Across space, the greatest engineering project in cosmic history awakened, preparing to move 3 trillion stars and their civilizations to safety. Whether they would arrive as refugees or conquerors of the impossible remained to be seen. But as the spatial bubbles formed around each galaxy in the local group, one thing became clear. Humanity had once again found a way to turn certain defeat into uncertain victory. The galaxy-moving project worked exactly as designed. Within hours, the local group found itself in a completely different region of space, 2 billion light-years from the convergence's expansion path. But as they adjusted to their new cosmic neighborhood, long-range sensors detected something unexpected. They weren't alone. Other galaxies floated nearby, clearly moved by similar technology. The warning message from Andromeda had reached more than one civilization, and humanity's solution had inspired others to attempt their own impossible escapes. As Admiral Chen studied the sensor readings showing dozens of relocated galactic civilizations in their new cosmic home, she smiled for the first time in months. Humanity had not just saved themselves and their neighbors. They had begun building the foundation for something unprecedented in the universe's history, a community of civilizations united by their refusal to accept extinction. The convergence still consumed galaxies in their original region of space, but here in the deep cosmos, life had found a way to continue. And somewhere among the stars, humanity prepared for their next impossible dream, building bridges between the survivors and creating something better than what they had left behind.